They called him the King of Blessed Memory. So did the poets of his time, and so did history itself. In the pages of the Lusiads, he is not merely a king. He is a hero, founder of a dynasty, and the savior of a nation on the brink. Fernão Lopes, the royal chronicler, wrote that he was fair, steadfast, and essential to the kingdom. But it was the people who confirmed it. Dom John was the master of Avis, the bastard who did not inherit the crown but claimed it. He raised Portugal with his own hands, with courage, with justice, and with hope. This is the story of the man who restored the glory of a kingdom and earned forever the name King of Blessed Memory. He was born in Lisbon on the 11th of April, 1357, son of King Pedro I and Teresa Lourenço. He was not born to rule. He was born a bastard outside the line of succession, but destiny writes with unexpected strokes. As a child, he was placed under the care of the military order of Avis. There he learned to command and to wait. In 1364, he became master of the order at just 7 years old, by the will of his father and under the care of trusted men. He grew up far from the court, but close to the world of arms, where he earned the respect of knights and soldiers. Discreet, steady, watchful. Over time, he became a point of balance. He posed no threat to the crown, but won the respect of Lisbon and the growing trust of the bourgeoisie. Loyal in court, just in the eyes of the people, and in times of conflict, he stood with courage. And when the kingdom fell into emptiness, it was he who rose and became its pillar. It was the year 1383. And on the 22nd of October, King Ferdinand drew his final breath. He left no male heir, only a daughter, Beatrice, married to the King of Castile. Some months earlier, a fragile accord had been sealed, the Treaty of Salvaterra de Magos. It promised the crown of Portugal to Princess Beatrice through her marriage to the King of Castile. But beneath that promise, a greater danger stirred. Many feared it would lead to the absorption of Portugal into Castile. And that was precisely the ambition of John of Castile. So began Portugal's most defining dynastic crisis. The throne trembled, and with it trembled the very existence of the nation. The regency fell to the Dowager Queen Leonor Teles, an unpopular figure surrounded by suspicions. Some chroniclers even insinuated an intimate connection with Count Andero, her closest advisor. The people grew wary. The voices of the city pushed back, and Lisbon began to rise. At the end of 1383, Dom John, master of Avis, he stepped into Lisbon's royal stronghold and into history, and ordered the execution of Count Andero. It was the blow that changed everything. Days later, he was acclaimed in Lisbon as regent and defender of the realm. He was not king, but he became the face of resistance. Castile responded. Under the pretext of defending Queen Beatrice's rights, John I of Castile invaded Portugal, driven by the ambition of total domination. At the fields of Atoleiros, Dom Nuno, the constable of the realm, led a bold defense, stopping the Castilian charge with unshakable resolve, using a defensive tactic that halted the enemy's charge. It was a crucial victory, one that inspired hope among the people. But the true test was yet to come. It was a turning point, but the storm was far from over. In 1384, John of Castile marched south and laid siege to Lisbon. 5 months of fear, famine, and silence. Inside the city, the people stood firm with the master of Avis. Outside the walls, Dom Nuno cut off the enemy's lifeline. No food, no reinforcements, no escape. And then came a darker enemy, the plague. It spread among soldiers, officers, even horses. Morale broke, chaos followed. And as the epidemic reached the city as well, the courage of the people did not waver. The siege came to an end in September. Lisbon had survived the storm, scarred, starving, but unbroken. And Portugal, still without a crowned king, stood defiant. but the decisive battle was still to come. In the spring of 1385, the kingdom's leaders gathered in Coimbra to decide its fate. Three factions stood opposed: those loyal to Castile, the sons born of Inés de Castro and King Pedro, and the supporters of the Master of Avis, the people's defender. The high nobility hesitated, but the people and the lesser nobility had already chosen their side. Then rose a voice without a crown. Among them stood John of the Rules, jurist, orator, patriot. With words forged in reason and in fire, he shattered the dynastic claims and defended a Portugal ruled not by blood but by will. In the end, the people prevailed. And so the people proclaimed, "We want him, we want him, we want him as king!" And the Master of Avis was acclaimed King of Portugal, not by heritage, but by merit and by hope. From that moment forward, Dom John emerged stronger than ever, crowned not just by law, but by the heart of a nation. And ahead lay the true test, for war was coming. The news echoed beyond the borders, and what inspired hope in Portugal stirred indignation in Castile. A few months later, the Castilian king invaded Portugal. Once again, war would become the judge of history. On the 14th of August, 1385, in the fields of Aljubarrota, outnumbered yet resolute, the army of Portugal held its ground. At the center of it all, Dom Nuno, the constable of the realm, calm in command and fierce in purpose. With bold tactics and iron discipline, he turned the battlefield into a fortress of resistance. Beside him, Dom John held the line, guiding the defense and lifting the hearts of his men, and uniting the realm in one final stand. It was the Battle of the Kings, as many chroniclers would call it. On one side, the King of Castile and the might of French cavalry. On the other side, the Portuguese, outnumbered, but resolute with English allies at their flank. And yet Portugal stood victorious, defying every prediction. With strategy, with courage, with faith, the triumph at Aljubarrota sealed the fate of Castile's ambitions. Independence was sealed, the crown legitimized, and thus was born the Avis dynasty. After the victory, Dom John ordered a monastery to rise where the battle had been won, in memory of Aljubarrota and as a promise carved in stone. The clash at Aljubarrota had ended, but peace was still far from reach. For years there were skirmishes, tensions, and border movements. In 1411, the Treaty of Ailón brought an end to years of tension between Castile and Portugal. The war was over, and the future could finally begin. With the victory at Aljubarrota, Portugal was free, but it needed allies. In 1387, 2 years after his acclamation, Dom John had married Philippa of Lancaster, daughter of John of Gaunt of the English royal house, Duke of Lancaster, and a claimant to the Castilian throne. It was more than a union of blood. It was a bold strategic alliance. The marriage came to seal the Treaty of Windsor, signed a year earlier on the 9th of May, 1386. A pact of friendship, mutual support, and sovereign respect between Portugal and England. More than a treaty, it was the beginning of the oldest alliance in the world still in force. With Philippa, the king gained more than power. He gained a wise and devout companion, respected, educated, and strong in spirit. Together, they built a family that would shape history. And in this time of peace, vision, and purpose, the seeds of the future were sown. Dom John was not just a king of battles and alliances. He was also a king of ideas and of reform. Right after the crisis, he laid the foundations of a new kingdom, more stable, more just, and more modern. Even before his acclamation in 1385, he began reorganizing the kingdom's finances, launching a general excise tax reform, creating a tax system that was more rational and better controlled. He passed laws to protect the property of the deceased and to limit feudal abuses against the common people. He secured the support of the elites but also opened the way for justice. He allowed appeals in the lands of the constable, paving the way for a less feudal and more impartial justice. He reformed the courts, strengthened the administration, promoted education, and fostered a court of knowledge with support for the arts, letters, and historical memory. Together with Philippa of Lancaster, he built a court that was cultured, austere, and morally strong. And from that court, a wiser, stronger Portugal quietly began to take shape. And it was also under his reign that a symbolic change took place. In 1422, Portugal left behind the Hispanic era and began to count the years from the birth of Christ. It was a new calendar and a new beginning. In the days of the Western Schism, as the church stood torn between competing popes, Dom John pledged his loyalty to Rome, while Castile followed the antipope in Avignon. It was a choice of faith, yes, but also one of diplomacy, and it helped affirm Portugal's identity in the heart of Christendom. It was also during his reign that Portugal began to look to the sea, not yet with ambition, but with the first steps of the next generation. And though his greatest achievements were on solid ground, stabilizing a kingdom on the edge of collapse, Dom John prepared the path for his sons to dream beyond the horizon. From a political union, a legendary family was born. Dom John and Philippa of Lancaster formed a rare alliance of power and of principle, of reason and of virtue. Philippa was English, granddaughter of kings, but she embraced Portugal in spirit and in purpose. Cultured, devout, and refined, she turned the court into a place of knowledge, austerity, and moral elevation. Together they had children who would make history. 6 of them survived and came to be known as the illustrious generation. The name came later, but the brilliance was born in their time. Prince Duarte, the heir, the philosopher king, known to many as the eloquent, a man of letters, a deep thinker, influenced by early humanist thought. Prince Pedro, the one of the 7 journeys, a traveling prince, collector of wisdom and experience. He served as regent and fell at Alfa-Ribeira, standing by the ideals he held true. Prince Henry, the navigator, a visionary of the sea and the driving force behind the first Atlantic explorations. Prince Fernando, the saint prince. He took a vow of chastity and joined the crusade in Tangier. He was captured and died in Fez, never rescued. Princess Isabel, Duchess of Burgundy, wife of Philip the Good, and voice of Portugal abroad. Prince John, discreet and loyal, master of the Order of Santiago, and guardian of the dynasty's balance. They were more than princes and princesses. They were the soul of a new Portugal, forged in knowledge and guided by purpose. From their hands rose a kingdom of thinkers, sailors, and visionaries, a land prepared to cross the limits of the world. Portugal stood poised to push the limits of the known world. Their legacy was not just in titles, but in the dreams they carried, and in the future they helped build. In 1415, the kingdom was stable, organized, prepared, and Dom John I knew it was time to decide the future. Around him, ideas were taking shape. In the court, among the nobles, and within his own family, a bold proposal emerged to conquer Ceuta, a Muslim stronghold in North Africa, a strategic key between the Atlantic and the Mediterranean. The idea gained momentum. It carried weight among the nobles, the clergy, and his sons, especially Prince Henry, whose vision reached beyond the horizon. But the decision remained the king's alone. While preparations were underway, a deep sorrow struck the monarch. Queen Philippa of Lancaster, wife and counselor, died at the monastery of Odevelas, victim of the plague. Before her death, she had blessed her sons and entrusted them with faith as her final gift. The fleet set sail from Faro on August 7th. They landed in Ceuta on the 21st with courage and without great resistance. The attack began from the beach, and it was swift. The city was taken in a single day, from the beaches to the citadel. It was a total conquest and the beginning of a new era. The next day, within the captured walls, Dom John knighted his sons, honoring them in the blood of battle and in the silence of victory. More than a plan had been fulfilled. A destiny had been sealed. That was more than a conquest. It was the beginning of an age. The first step, the first key, and from that moment on, Portugal would never look at the sea the same way again. Many would later see in Ceuta the first chapter of Portugal's global story. At the age of 76, after 48 years on the throne, the king who once saved Portugal breathed his last breath. It was the 14th of August, 1433, the very same date as the Battle of Aljubarrota, where he had changed the fate of a nation. The king who rose from the shadows of bastardy to restore a kingdom in ruins, to conquer, respect, peace, and hope. His body lies in eternal rest at the monastery of Batalha, beside Philippa of Lancaster, in the house of stone he had vowed to raise. As two pillars of a new era, he left behind a kingdom stable, reformed, and respected, a living alliance with England, a generation of prepared sons, and a nation ready to face the world. He was the founder of the Avis dynasty, the master turned king, the man who earned the crown and the memory of a people. History gave him a name, the King of Good Memory, and memory is where he lives forever.